who recently penned a very interesting letter to his faithful and did a very interesting interview with the Pillar Catholic about what he wrote there. And you may know that there's been some controversy about how to treat Catholic politicians who are supporting abortion in one way or another and communion. Well, Bishop Paprocki wants us to open up a little bit more of a conversation about not the people who are running the country or the state that you live in, but are running those businesses that you do business with. After Roe versus Wade, you might remember all of a sudden everybody's trying to kind of almost do their twisted form of virtue signaling, saying, we'll pay anything to abort the babies of, well, they didn't say abort the babies. They don't talk that way, but of employees who don't want those babies. So Bishop Paprocki, first of all, thanks very much for being with us.
You're welcome. Great to be with you too.
So Roe versus Wade, it's changing the whole landscape. And now we have to seriously think about the companies we're doing business with because many have committed themselves to formally cooperate in the deaths of children.
Right. So I think there are a couple of major shifts that we have to note here, and that's what I wrote about to the faithful of my diocese in my bishop's column. First of all is the fact that we have businesses now. I think in the past, the focus has been pretty much more on politicians and the laws that they were passing that were promoting abortion. Well, after the U.S. Supreme Court decision and Dobbs versus Jackson overturned Roe versus Wade, we see dozens of companies throughout the United States issuing policies saying that they're going to pay for their employees. If they're in a state where they can't get an abortion, they will pay their travel expenses. They will pay, some are saying up to $4,000 for you to travel to another state to get an abortion. And these are not little companies either. These are companies like Amazon and American Express, Apple, Microsoft, and even entertainment companies like Disney. Disney, which certainly when I was growing up was considered to be a family-friendly environment. But I think parents really need to question that these days. You've got Disney saying they'll pay for their employees to get an abortion. They also recently announced that they'll be broadcasting R-rated movies on their Disney Plus channel. So I think corporate America is something that we really need to look at. The other issue that I raised here was that I think there's also a significant shift in the moral analysis now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned. Before the politicians could say something like, well, I'm personally opposed to abortion, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's the law of the land. And I think we see now that the Supreme Court has said, no, it's not the law of the land. It's up to individual states and their legislatures to discuss this and come to their own conclusions. What we see here are politicians like the President of the United States, President Biden, issuing executive orders that are facilitating abortion. Now that brings up the shift. The moral analysis is that the difference between what we call formal cooperation and material cooperation. So material cooperation is when you're involved in some way in evil, but you don't have the intent. And in some ways it's unavoidable. So like here in Illinois, for example, we have taxpayer funding of abortion. Well, that means anytime you buy something in a store here, your sales tax is going to the state. And if you pay state income tax, that's going to the state. Now, I don't know how they're using that money, so I would think that a portion of with the sales tax that I'm paying in Illinois is perhaps going to subsidize abortions. Well, that's called remote material cooperation. That's not sinful. Because there's not much, if anything, you can do about that. Formal cooperation is when the person has the intent to promote the evil. And so I think what we see, actions like an executive order that the president has issued, he now is exhibiting the intent. He is very consciously promoting abortion. And when a person does that, he shares in the culpability. So it is a sin. So a person who is involved in formal cooperation in a grave evil, for example, shares the same kind of moral culpability as the person having or performing the abortion, and namely consequence. One of the consequences of that is in the state of grave sin, you're not to be receiving Holy Communion.
Our number here is 888-318-7884. If you'd like to talk with Bishop Paprocki, you are very welcome to call 888-318-7884. And we're talking about the Eucharist here a bit, and how, as it relates to this topic. And you were just I was going to ask you how is this related to the Eucharist? But your point is that when we're engaged in grievously immoral acts, maybe especially when those acts are public, we shouldn't be presenting ourselves for communion. And often I think that we have a lot of media types, people like me, who would like to play up the differences among the American Catholic bishops. Like, this one wants to ban so-and-so, this one won't ban anybody. But the truth is that if you come to the kind of the crux of the matter, there is general agreement, it seems to me, among bishops that people who are in a state of grave public sin should not present themselves. Now, once they do, there might be a difference about what to do about that, but it does seem to me there's a general agreement among you should not be presenting yourself for communion if you're one of these corporate leaders who's paying for abortions or one of these politicians who's advocating for abortions.
Right, that's basic Catholic teaching. That's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and even long before that, it's been the moral teaching of the Church that anyone who is in the state of grave sin should not go to Holy Communion. That's not just with regard to abortion. That's any mortal sin. That's those who are cohabiting, those who are in adulterous relationships, even those who are missing Mass on Sunday. That's a grave sin, and should not be going to communion until you receive absolution in the sacrament of reconciliation, and that requires conversion, a change of heart, a firm purpose of amendment, not to commit that sin again. So it's really nothing new here. And in terms of that, where that's stated in canon law, that's actually Canon 916, which talks about the obligation not to receive Holy Communion if you're conscious of grave sin. Canon 915 is the one before that, which talks about not the minister of communion, the priest, the deacon, or extraordinary minister of communion, not admitting someone to Holy Communion if they are persistent and obstinate and manifest grave sin. Well, the problem with putting that burden on the minister who's distributing Holy Communion is that may be the case where you can identify a prominent politician who's been outspoken in a pro-abortion position. But now, as this moves to the corporate world, if the CEO of one of these major companies that's announcing that they're going to pay for their employees to get abortions, if they walked up for communion, I would have no idea who that person is.
Sure, right.
So in that sense, it's almost impossible in those cases for us to even talk about Canon 915. So it really shifts, I think, the focus to Canon 916 and the longstanding moral principle that if you're in the state of mortal sin, you should not even approach Holy Communion.
Again, the number 888-318-7884. A lot of talk about Eucharistic coherence. What does that mean, and what gives us Eucharistic coherence, especially when it comes to this grave matter, this abortion matter, which really is dividing our country, but it's making some people do mad things like spending corporate money to kill babies. How does this discussion figure into this idea of Eucharistic coherence?
Well, that concept or that phrase, Eucharistic coherence, actually comes from the bishops of Latin America. And it is significant that this document is called the Aparecida document because it was in that city of Aparecida where they issued this document in 2007. And that was at the time when Archbishop Jorge Bergoglio was the Archbishop of Buenos Aires and was very involved in the drafting of this document. And even as Pope, he has referred to this Aparecida document as a blueprint for pastoral ministry. So there's a passage in here, if I'll read this to you. It says, "We hope that legislators, heads of government, and health professionals, conscious of the dignity of human life and the rootedness of the family in our peoples, will defend and protect it from the abominable crimes of abortion and euthanasia. That is their responsibility. We must adhere to Eucharistic coherence. That is, be conscious that they cannot receive Holy Communion and at the same time act with deeds or words against the commandments, particularly when abortion, euthanasia, and other grave crimes against life and the family are encouraged. End of quote. That's a very strong statement. And I found it interesting that recently a reporter asked Pope Francis about President Biden receiving Holy Communion, and his answer was that President Biden should talk to his pastor about this incoherence. And Pope Francis himself used that phrase, incoherence, which indicates that he in his mind, and he's saying very clearly what President Biden is doing by promoting abortion and receiving Holy Communion is incoherent.
Again, the number 888-318-7884. This is a call that that's for all of us to maintain this kind of Eucharistic coherence. That is, that our life is not giving witness against the Eucharist and against the life in Christ, and then we're going up to receive Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity. Just before we go to the break, and then I will let people ask you questions. You list a bunch of companies who made these "will pay for your abortion" or "will send you out of state for your abortion" promises to their female employees, and I guess trying to gain some good PR from that, although that makes no sense to me. But that's apparently what they thought, or maybe it's a sincere moral position they hold. Whatever is the case, that you listed the companies. But you're not saying that, for example, the CEO of Amazon who says we'll pay for abortions and then pays for abortions, you're saying that's a mortal sin. That's a grave sin, and that there's no question about that. But what about if I do business with Amazon? Are you just saying maybe reconsider that, or are you saying it's sinful for me to do business with Amazon?
No, I wouldn't go so far to say that it's sinful to do business with Amazon. And I'm not calling for a formal boycott. I'm not organizing something like that. But I am suggesting that people consider their options. For example, if you have a choice between buying a product from somebody on this list, Amazon, for example. Amazon sells all kinds of things, from books to everything that you might want in your house. And there are plenty of stores in your own neighborhood or your shopping mall where maybe the owner of that store. I had a banker, for example, tell me, because there are a number of banks that are listed on here. We have Bank of America, we have JP Morgan Chase Bank on here. So I had a local banker in Springfield. After he saw my column, he emailed me and to assure me that his bank would not do these kinds of policies. And so I think, to that extent, we should be looking as well. If I have an account in one of these banks, maybe I should be thinking about transferring my funds to another bank. But I'd say it's a moral consideration. I think it's not a sin, though. Some people maybe have limited options in terms of what they can buy, or maybe a person who is not able to get out of the house, got a disability or something like that. Maybe they can only shop from one of these companies online. So I think those are some of the things that go into the balance about, are you a material cooperator or a formal cooperator? If you have that intent, you say, well, I'm going to buy from this company because I want to support that policy, and I want to support their spending money for their employees to get abortions. Well, that makes you a formal cooperator. And that is gravely sinful to do that.
Again, 888-318-7884. I really did appreciate that you, as a Catholic bishop, actually listed some and started naming names in that column. I hope that we'll see more of that without laying any heavy burden on people. Of, like you said, if you need to use Amazon, you need to use Amazon. But in order to inform people, I do think it's important that we speak openly about these things. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with your calls on Eucharistic coherence with Bishop Thomas Paprocki on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN, teaching the truth. Thanks for the excellent programming. We had a representative from the local Catholic radio yesterday at Mass, and he encouraged the members to listen. And, it seems like excellent programming, very thought-provoking.
I just love your program. I wanted to tell you guys that the Catholic radio is just the greatest thing in my life.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. If you'd like to read the column that our guest, Bishop Thomas Paprocki of the Diocese of Springfield, Illinois, wrote, it's called Politicians, Business Leaders Who Promote Abortion Policies and Benefits Are Not to Receive Holy Communion. That's the name of the article, and you can get that at the Catholic Times of the Diocese of Springfield, Illinois. Lots of folks on the line to talk with you, Bishop. Shall we go to the phones?
All right.
Let's go to Art in Covington, Kentucky, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. Art, I hope everything's okay there in Kentucky. We got a lot of bad news out of Kentucky lately.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to storm here any minute now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it's funny that the sun's out. We got partial blue skies, and I just got an alert on my phone about going to have a storm coming, so there you go.
Well, that's not what you need, and I'm sorry that there's more of that rain coming. We've certainly been praying for all the people in Kentucky, especially that. Yeah, it's awful. But go ahead with your question for Bishop Thomas Paprocki.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Question is, you talk about Speaker Pelosi and President Biden. They're both Catholic. And I say that they don't promote abortion. They're pro-choice people. Okay, church says that's wrong. What, in your mind, what would you want Speaker Pelosi to do or say, and President Biden? What would you just want them to come out and say, abortion's wrong, it's against the Fifth Commandment, you cannot kill? What would you think to make the church happy in reference to the Speaker and the President?
Well, I think it would help if they said that abortion was wrong. And I think specifically what I would be looking for them to do would be to stop promoting policies and taking actions like executive orders that actually promote abortion. I don't buy the line that they're simply pro-choice. If they were really pro-choice, these companies, for example, why are they only paying $4,000 or more or less for their employees to get abortions? Why aren't they saying, well, we'll pay your hospital costs when you go to have a baby. We'll pay for you, if you're miles away from a hospital, we'll pay for whatever it costs for you to get there. So I think they're not, it's not sincere when they talk about being pro-choice, because if they were sincerely pro-choice, they would also be helping women who to have their babies and to care for their babies. And so I think what would make the Catholic Church happy with President Joe Biden and Speaker Nancy Pelosi, stop promoting abortion and start promoting helping mothers to have and care for their babies, and their fathers to take care of them also.
Art, thank you very much for getting us started here. It is striking to me when you think about that we've never lived in a world without Roe, for decades and decades. It's going to take time to work out, the new political landscape, but everybody's on the hook now. There's nobody that can say, I got, as far as politics or business, I'm not involved in that. I got nothing to say about that. It's just, there's a lot to be settled, and you got to pick a side.
Right. And that was the hope, I think, when Roe versus Wade was decided. It was really just by judicial fiat. Justice Blackmun, who wrote that decision, basically thought that he was going to end the debate, and instead it continued and raged for another 50 years. And then even in 1992, with the decision of Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the Supreme Court basically came right out and said, you people should stop arguing about this and just get on board. And obviously, that didn't happen either, because it's a wrongful decision, and we shouldn't acquiesce to a wrongful decision.
Amen to that. Walt in Pennsylvania, you are up next, listening on Holy Spirit Radio. Walt, thanks for your call. Go ahead with your question for our guest, Bishop Thomas Paprocki.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for being on the air here. I'm very puzzled when people are saying we shouldn't have pro-abortion politicians placed under interdict because it, quote, politicizes the Holy Communion. But you see, I don't have a whole lot of letters at the end of my name like a lot of these guys do to make these decisions. But it seems pretty crystal clear that if somebody is for manifest grave evil of murdering other people, and not only philosophically, but actually doing things like Biden and Pelosi, etc., they should be under interdict. It's actually better for their soul, too, if you read St. Paul's letter.
All right, Walt, let me get... I'm sorry, Walt. Let me get the bishop to respond.
Well, I think to talk about something like an interdict is actually a canonical penalty, and imposing canonical penalties is a little more complicated to do, usually involving a canonical trial. And so I think what I and other bishops like Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone in San Francisco are taking the approach, starting with canons 915 and 916, which are more administrative, and especially canon 916, just really putting the burden on the person to do the right thing. That doesn't rule out the possibility in the future. I mean, for example, if Speaker Pelosi continues to just ignore what Archbishop Cordileone is saying, and that seems to be her approach, after he issued that instruction to her, she apparently went and received Holy Communion at the Vatican. And so if she's going to publicly flaunt that, well, that may require at some point more drastic measures to be taken. But I think our approach is to do things incrementally. That's kind of always the best approach. Is let's start with trying to give people the opportunity to cooperate and to comply. And then if they refuse or just outright defy what they're being told to do by the church authorities, then I think perhaps more drastic actions might need to be taken later.
Do you think that some of these, some bishops, not in political hotspots like Washington, D.C. or Chicago or New York, but in corporate hotspots, like, I don't know, Delaware and some of the bishops in those places, if the headquarters of one of these big corporations that's paying for abortion is there and they know there's a Catholic CEO, do you think bishops have an obligation to pick up the phone and say, hey, I need to speak with you about this. This is a grave matter?
Well, yes, I think just as in the case with politicians, before publicly telling a politician not to receive Holy Communion, there should be, and there have been, many private conversations. I know I had those conversations with Senator Dick Durbin and other politicians here in Illinois. I know Archbishop Cordileone did. He made that very clear that he did have some conversations with Speaker Pelosi and tried to continue those dialogues with her, and then she just basically shut him down and was not responding to him. So, that's always pastorally, that's an important step to take. And so I think it would be the same.
For corporate America. We had a little
policies. We have to address that.
We had a little bit of a freeze on the audio there, Bishop, but we got your point that we have to do that now with the corporate executives as well. It's going to put a lot of people in a tough spot. What if you're not the CEO, but you're the vice president or the human resources director or something for these corporations? Those people too have to start making choices about what they'll cooperate with and what they won't.
Right. I think if you're in a management position, if you're a middle manager, there might be less influence that you have or anything that you could do. If you're upper management, but not the CEO, and if you disagree, to make your views known. I've also already heard from some employees who work for companies that are announcing policies like this, that they're looking to change companies. And I think that should give some of these companies pause too, because many of them are finding it difficult to hire staff. And if there's a danger of losing employees, they should think twice about that.
Bishop Thomas Paprocki here with us to talk about Eucharistic coherence and this whole abortion debate, which has become more fraught, not less, here in the United States. More right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com. Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Are you a revert to the Catholic faith?
We'd love to hear about your journey tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
On most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Bishop Thomas Paprocki is our guest. He's the Bishop of Springfield, Illinois. And we're just delighted that he's going to be with us here for our Catholic Answers Conference on the Eucharist. And you'll get a chance to visit with him in person and ask him these things yourself. The Eucharist, I Am With You Always, is the name of our conference this year. It's the weekend of the 24th of September. If you use the promo code EARLY, you save $50 on your ticket. Go to CatholicAnswersConference.com and register right now. CatholicAnswersConference.com. Register, use that promo code EARLY, and save $50 on your ticket. Bishop Paprocki is a good and gentle soul, and he doesn't use words like creepy, but I kind of find it creepy, this whole thing of we'll pay for your abortion. And I am not entirely sure that, and I apologize if this is wrong to make this speculation, but there's some bottom line consideration that it's cheaper for a company to abort a baby than to take care of women employees who have babies and to take care of their babies. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some encouragement for the euthanasia movement among big corporations before too long, because sure, it saves you on insurance, those insurance bills. But that is my speculation. That is not what the bishop said. He said, let's have some Eucharistic coherence, and that one of the things that we saw immediately after that Roe versus Wade overturn decision, the Dobbs decision, was lots of corporate officials coming out and say we'll pay for abortions. Well, if they're Catholic, they should not be coming to a communion. That's what Bishop is saying. You're welcome to call and ask Bishop Thomas Paprocki your questions, 888-318-7884. Going to Arkansas now, Greg in Green Forest, Arkansas, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Greg, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Bishop Thomas Paprocki.
Bishop, thank you for your witness. Thank you for standing up for life. Thank you for taking the gospel seriously. And and holding up for life. Our family, we've adopted 2 children at birth, and we sure are thankful for birth mothers that had the guts to do the right thing. But I guess what I was going to ask, Bishop, was this, on this issue, I have family up in your area, and, it just amazes me that Catholics are not pro-life. How in the world has this happened, and what in the world can we, I appreciate what you're doing, and you need to keep at it there, but what in the world can we do to help?
Well, yes, that's a very perplexing and troubling situation now to see that, so many Catholics apparently have bought in.
Oh, we got a little audio freeze again on Bishop. I'm so sorry about that. We'll have him here in a second, Greg, and he will respond. But sorry, Bishop, had a little glitch again. I don't know what we're doing wrong today, but twice we've had those glitches. You better start over because you glitched right at the beginning of what you were saying to Greg.
Okay, can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. Yes, it's really a very sad thing that this is happening, and especially when you see it with people that call themselves Catholic, and when you see it within your families, they're just buying into whatever the culture is promoting here. And so I think we need to continue to be a witness to the truth, and that's difficult these days. When people don't even want to accept that there is such a thing as the truth, but we have to be able to articulate that the truth is that human life begins at conception, and that's not a religious statement. That's a scientific statement that scientists will tell you. That's the moment when human life begins. So we have to do that and continue to be a witness to that. It can be very frustrating. It requires patience. It also requires that we be loving with people. When we say these things, we have to make sure that we're really doing this out of love and concern for them, and not to be attacking people who disagree with us. But what we're trying to do is not turn them away from the church. We're trying to bring them back in. And so even something like telling someone you can't go to Holy Communion, well, you can't go to Holy Communion until you go to confession. And so what we're trying to do there is have a conversion, have a change of heart. And that was our Lord's message to people, his very first words in his public ministry: repent and believe in the good news. And so we're trying to call people to that whole idea of repentance, come back, and follow the teachings that our Lord Jesus has given to us with love for our fellow human beings.
Okay, Greg?
Yes, and hey, the main thing which we see the pro-life issue being more prominent and more on the right side with our young people, but that's what, to me, hey, parents, Lord have mercy, teach the truth to your children,
Amen, brother.
Thank you, Bishop.
Well,
you're welcome.
And thank you, Greg, and congratulations on the 2 adopted babies.
Thank you.
Let's go to Tom in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Tom, thank you for waiting. Go ahead with your question for our guest, Bishop Thomas Paprocki.
Well, thank you for having me on the program. Here's my question and my thoughts here. Pelosi is the only politician, certainly the only major politician, who's been denied communion, as far as I know. And then that took 5 years. Now, surely there's a way this ought to be handled more systematically and more timely and more widespread. So why isn't it?
Well, Senator Durbin, Speaker Pelosi is a high-ranking official, the highest-ranking official that has been told not to go to communion. But I mentioned Senator Durbin here in Illinois. He's a United States Senator. He's a very prominent leader in the Senate. He's the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I have also told here in Illinois, the Speaker of the House of our Illinois General Assembly and the President of the Illinois Senate, when they passed pro-abortion legislation, and both of them Catholic, I told them they could not go to communion. I know Archbishop Naumann had some conversations with Nancy Sebelius when she was the governor in Kansas, So there have been some cases like this, but I would agree with you. I think there are more that need to be addressed, and I would like to see my brother bishops really taking the initiative on this. I think what we've tried for a long time now is a process of dialogue, and hoping that by having conversations with them, that they would come to pro-life, which, as I said, is not really just a religious belief that's based on science. But our hope would be that they would come around on that. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is after in some cases, after decades of dialogue, it doesn't seem to be working. So I think what we're also seeing is some bishops, like Archbishop Cordileone, I think it was extremely patient and trying to talk to Speaker Pelosi, but he finally reached at the end of his rope with that as well, you might say, and said, okay, that's enough talking. It's time to take some action.
Tom, thanks very, very much for the question. It does seem to me, Bishop, that at some point in the 1970s, somebody invented this idea of I'm personally opposed, but I won't impose my beliefs on others, and it still infects the Catholic way of thinking or talking about the politics of abortion.
Yes, that was Governor Mario Cuomo at the time. He gave a talk at the University of Notre Dame in which he basically laid out that position, how you could, as a politician, be personally opposed to abortion, but being pro-choice, you're not going to impose those beliefs on other people. So you've heard that line from many politicians. What I note about that is abortion is the only political issue I've ever heard where a politician said, I don't want to impose my beliefs on somebody else.
Otherwise, what's the point of being a politician?
Exactly. Politics is about policy.
Yeah.
And policies are about your personal beliefs.
Yeah.
And so every politician does that. That's why we have elections. That's why we have platforms, and they state their positions on various issues.
Yeah.
And so it's just disingenuous to say I'm not going to impose my belief on other people.
Well, it would seem bizarre in almost any, like if you said, I am personally opposed to drunk driving, but I don't want to impose that on other people, then people would go, that's insane. But somehow it worked. It's magic for the last 40 or 50 years among Catholic politicians.
And there was a shift there also because, we saw someone like Bill Clinton when he was running for president back in the 1990s, 1992, I believe it was when he first said about, abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And then a few years later, they dropped the rare. And now, in fact, some politicians are celebrating abortions. They think they cheer when someone says that she's had an abortion.
Yeah, indeed. There has been a lot of disillusionment over the years. I was one who believed Bill Clinton when he said that. And then I can remember the day he vetoed the partial birth abortion ban. And I thought this is utterly inconsistent with what he ran on. And then I've never believed a politician since. Well, no, I have believed some of them, but I mean, there was something disillusioning about that if you can veto partial birth abortion ban, you're not serious about safe, legal, and rare.
Right, and and it's not just members of one party. I think we've seen members of both parties. In fact, what I find disconcerting and troubling is the fact that many of these Supreme Court decisions, the ones that were in favor of abortion, they were written by justices of the court who were appointed by Republicans. Harry Blackmun, who wrote Roe versus Wade, was a Nixon appointee. Kennedy, who was involved in many of these cases, Robert Kennedy, or Anthony Kennedy, rather.
Yeah.
Justice Anthony Kennedy, he was a Reagan appointee. And Sandra Day O'Connor, the same thing. So, it's both parties need to be called to task on this.
And on the other side, people forget this, but the great defender of the right to life was Justice White, who was appointed by a Democratic president, appointed by John Kennedy. And Justice White, he's the one who famously said, when Roe was adopted, this has nothing to do with the Constitution. This is raw judicial power. And so, we have a lot of reason to be proud of a person like Justice White. But yeah, it crosses all the political lines, and it's just gonna get messier in the coming years as we figure this out. But I do think there's good reason to hope. But I don't know. I guess I'm always a Pollyanna about this. But I think we're going to see more pro-life Democrats. But people are going to make fun of me for saying that. But I think we are. We'll take a quick break while I take off my Pollyanna braids and get back to the real world right after this Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
I just want to share that 5 years ago, my lovely warrior princess and saint of a wife and I decided to adopt a little girl through foster care. She is the perfect roundout of our family of 3 boys and her. Yes, there are challenges. Very grateful today for all the blessings that he has shown our family.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic. The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
One time somebody said to me, "Why don't you air these people?" And I said, "No, because I don't think they're Catholic." He says, "By what right do you have to say that?" I said, "I own the network."
Mother Angelica Live Classics. Tomorrow night, 8 Eastern on EWTN Television and Radio.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Starting off the week with a really great hour here on what we call Eucharistic coherence, the idea that if we are to receive Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist, that we should be properly disposed to do so by going to confession if we have grave sin or the possibility of grave sin on our soul, and that none of us should be giving witness counter to the gospel in fundamental things like the right of a human being to be alive, and then presenting ourselves to communion. Bishop Paprocki wrote a really fine essay and then did an interview with the Pillar Catholic folks about it. It's called "Politicians, Business Leaders Who Promote Abortion Policies and Benefits Are Not to Receive Holy Communion." The business leaders is the new part, and if you'd like to engage in that conversation with Bishop Paprocki, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Tammy's on the line in Columbus, Ohio, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. So we'll go to you, Tammy. Go ahead with your question for Bishop Paprocki.
Thank you so much, first of all, for taking my call, and I'm so thankful for both of you. My question maybe a little bit more of a vague one, but what do you do in the situation where not only your own business but your entire state organization is maybe indicating something that you oppose? So I'm a nurse in the state of Ohio, have been for almost 30 years, and all of the nurses in Ohio received an email from the Ohio Board of Nursing last stating that they were shocked and disappointed in the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, and that they expected all nurses to take care of the patient, including whatever their decisions were. Being said, I looked at my husband, and my first statement was, I guess I can't be a nurse anymore. So what do you do when something like this is happening, where you're really, I feel like I am being scorned for being a Catholic and a nurse, and they're expecting me to go against my faith in order to continue helping people in the profession that I've chosen.
Bishop Paprocki?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for your service as a nurse. And we certainly need nurses, so I would hope that you would not have to quit your job. What I would recommend in that situation would be to fight back. And we had a very similar situation here in Illinois a few years ago regarding pharmacists, where the governor issued a mandate that pharmacists had to fill prescriptions for contraceptives and abortifacient drugs. And that caught my attention because I've come from a family of pharmacists. My grandfather, my father, two of my brothers, and a niece and nephew. We have 4 generations of pharmacists in my family. And so I was in conversation with some other pharmacists in our state. They filed a lawsuit against the state of Illinois, and they won. Now, here in Illinois, we have a Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I don't know what the law is in Ohio, but most states have some kind of law that protects the rights of conscience. And even if you don't, there's ultimately the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which guarantees our free exercise of religion. Now, that's a difficult battle in some cases, but there are organizations out there that are willing to help. There's the St. Thomas More Society in Chicago, for example, a pro-life law firm. There's the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty. There's the Alliance for Defending Freedom. There are some good pro bono law firms out there that may be very willing to provide some pro bono legal services to fight a case to protect your religious freedom.
What do you think, Tammy?
Thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful.
Wonderful. I'm so glad. I think I'm so glad you mentioned those groups at the end too, because people can feel so alone, but you're not necessarily alone. I mean, you may have to make your stand alone sometimes, but you can consider people like the Becket Fund that you mentioned standing up for religious freedom all over the place, and so there is help.
Right. We shouldn't be afraid to look for help. And I recognize that, someone can feel very alone. You've got someone, state authority telling you have to do this.
Yeah.
But I think we have to remember we're not alone. So in the case of those pharmacists, one of the pharmacists I talked to initially was somebody working the night shift. And that's why it was an issue, because there was not another pharmacist on the shift that he could simply say, look, I'm not comfortable filling this prescription. Would you take care of it? The burden was being put on that pharmacist. But, then what happened, we found out there were other pharmacists who felt similarly. So I think you will find a lot of doctors and nurses that are not going to just roll over with this. Doctors and nurses get into healthcare profession because they want to help people.
Yeah.
And when they're being told you have to do something rather than helping a child to come into the world, you're going to help destroy that child. I don't think that's going to go over very well with healthcare professionals.
Tammy, thank you very, very much. I'm going to come back out here to Los Angeles, California, where Christopher is listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Christopher, thank you for downloading the app onto your phone. Go ahead with your question for our guest, Bishop Thomas Paprocki.
Hey, how you doing, Bishop? How you doing, Cy?
Very well.
Pretty much my quick question is, how you doing? Pretty much my quick question is, I don't really I think you might have already answered this with the whole governor question, but I don't really like imposing my views on other people. So when anyone, talks to me about abortion, I pretty much just tell them, your body, your sin, I mean, it's very clear that, what we believe in, and there is no gray. It's either black or white, it's either right or wrong. And what I normally always tell them is how I just said, your body, your sin, you're going to have to go before the Lord and explain that to him. Is that a bad approach?
Well, I think it's more than that. It's true, there are some things that are sinful that are not against the law. For example, telling a lie. You tell a lie to somebody, that's not necessarily a sin unless it's perjury under oath in a court. Then you might be prosecuted for that. But there are some things that are sinful but are also crimes. Murder, for example. You can't say, well, if I murder someone, that's my sin, and it's only my responsibility. No, our society protects other people's, and so we have laws against murder. You say, well, what about abortion? Well, that's just the woman's body. No, it's not. There's a baby in the mother's womb, and that's been part of the lie that has been told by Planned Parenthood and organizations like that. Oh, it's just some tissue. It's just a growth in your body, and you can take that out like a tumor. Well, ultrasound has shown that's not true. We see images of a real baby with hands and feet and movement, and so it's not a question of just a woman making a choice about her body. There's another real body inside of her, and that body deserves protection as well.
Does that make a difference to you thinking about it that way, Christopher? That there's actually a life being taken here?
Yeah, actually, you know what? That's a very eye-opening response. Yeah, I really need to start grabbing the bull by the horns then. Yeah, that really helps. Thank you.
Oh, well, God bless you, Christopher. If you're going to grab the bull by the horns, we want you to be as persuasive as you can, and we have a book called Persuasive Pro-Life. So if you would like a copy of it, I think you'll enjoy it. It's by Trent Horn, and people really like Trent Horn's writing for some reason. So I will be happy to send it to you. Just hang on the line. We'll send you a copy of our book, Persuasive Pro-Life. We got to keep Bishop working though. So we're going to go to John in St. Louis, Missouri. Can I go to John in St. Louis, Missouri? Listening on the Covenant Radio Network? All right. No, John's not there. I can't go to, you all lied to me. The bishop just said lying is a sin like 1 second ago. So we did get this comment from Scott off air, and he said, I think I might have addressed this. I didn't know if you wanted to address it anymore. Scott said, I think it's important to emphasize the financial incentive for businesses to pay for abortion. Is that something you're interested in emphasizing, or would you rather just stay with the don't formally cooperate with abortion?
Well, the business side of that, I'm not sure exactly what he's asking. That by buying their products, we're subsidizing them. Is that what he's saying?
I think what he's saying is that there is a financial incentive for them to pay for abortion because they don't have to, maternal leave and insurance for the child and all that. They don't have to pay for now.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's definitely a factor. Not only maternity leave and even paternity leave these days. Many companies have that as well. There's also the question of the disruption to the workforce. And so for if a company, even if they have a maternity leave policy, which is very good, that's fine. But then the company may be saying, oh, yeah, but we're going to lose that employee for whatever period of time their leave allows for, several weeks. We have to hire someone in the meantime, and that's going to be disruptive. And so in terms of just getting our work done, it's just more efficient if our employee will have an abortion. So, yeah, that's definitely a factor that I think is coming into play here.
Scott, thank you very, very much. We're coming to the end of our time with Bishop Paprocki, so I won't be able to go to more calls. Next hour, Jimmy Akin will be here, and we will do open forum. But Bishop, maybe just make the pitch to folks again. Oh, I know. First of all, again, Bishop Paprocki will be with us in September, just a couple months from now. No, well, September is next month. I guess I should say it that way. And we're really looking forward to you being out here. Thanks for agreeing to come out and talk about the Eucharist with us.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it also, to be with you and lots of other folks to address this very, very important issue. And I'm very grateful that Catholic Answers is providing this opportunity.
Are you going to be talking about this specific stuff, the Eucharistic coherence stuff, when you talk about the Eucharist?
Yes, I do. I do plan to talk about Eucharistic coherence, and that'll be the primary focus of my presentation.
Bishop Thomas Paprocki has been our guest. You should check out the interview over at thepillarcatholic.com. It's a good interview. When smart people interview other smart people, it always makes for good interviews, and that's what you'll find over there at the Pillar Catholic. And then also you can check out the newspaper of the Diocese of Springfield for Bishop Paprocki's own column. Just check his columns, and you'll come up with the one that we've been talking about today. It's important stuff, and we're really glad we had the chance to talk about it. Bishop, may we and our listeners have your blessing before we go.
Yes, may Almighty God be with you and bless you and keep you strong, especially in your pro-life efforts. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Bishop Paprocki, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Jimmy Akin, right after this, Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Thanks again to Bishop Paprocki for joining us. He will be here with us for the big conference coming up in September, so I hope you'll be there as well. And this hour, as promised, Jimmy Akin joins us. Jimmy is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of a bunch of books, including A Daily Defense, 365 Days Plus One to Becoming a Better Apologist, and The Bible is a Catholic Book, and The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness, and Where to Find It, and a whole bunch of other things. Jimmy Akin, thanks for being with us.
Hey, my pleasure, Cy Kellett, host of Catholic Answers Live, author of Teacher of Strange Things.
Yeah, this is good. We're starting you out with open forum this week, but we're ending the week with weird questions with Jimmy Akin. So we're starting good and ending good. And I don't know, have you seen any of the weird questions yet, or you haven't gathered them up? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I logged a new one today.
Oh, we got some good weirdness coming?
Emailed it in, and yeah, it's been a while since I read through the whole file, but I'll have it prepped by Friday.
My absolute favorite thing is when people say, this is probably a little too weird, and we're like, nope, not too weird for us. Bring it. The number here is 888-318-7884. It's open forum today, or this hour, I should say, and you are welcome to ask whatever you like. Already phones beginning to fill up. There's a couple lines open, though. You can still get in, 888-318-7884. As a matter of fact, I suggest that if you've been wanting to ask Jimmy a question, because usually people know when Jimmy's coming, and we kind of surprised you with it today, so usually the phone lines are full by the time we even start. But now you got a chance to call. And by the way, if you're not a Catholic person and you have a moral question, a philosophical, a scientific, a question about the Catholic Church in any way, you are very welcome. We'd love to talk with you. 888-318-7884.
Or about Christian stuff in general.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be specifically Catholic.
Right. Yeah. Please call. We got Bible questions, whatever. We're pretty loose, especially when Jimmy's here. We're probably going to take your question. So bring it on. I'm going to start with Joseph in Spring Hill, Tennessee today, listening to Eat. That sounds like such a nice place to live, Spring Hill, Tennessee. I don't know why. I just want to be there right now. Mm-hmm. I've never been there that I remember, but it just sounds good. Listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Joseph, we're glad to have you. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy. Me and my girlfriend, we're not married.
Hang on, Joseph. I'm so sorry, but I got to get you to. Is there any way? Maybe you're on speaker or something, because it was Oh, now he left. He'll call back. There must have been a bad connection. We'll get him to call back.
Sounded like he was driving, so he may have gone through a bad patch.
Oh yeah. Okay. Call back though, Joseph. We really do want to talk with you. Let's go to Niall in New Jersey, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Niall, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
So, I've been talking to my friend about the faith. We've been going back and forth, and he one of his main objections when I tried to share my beliefs with him is how is it necessary to confess to a priest when he says you can just confess to God? He's confused as to where that comes from, why that's important. So that's basically the gist of my question.
Okay, so the place you want to go is John chapter 20. And John chapter 20 is the next to last chapter in the Gospel of John, and Jesus is raised from the dead. And then he comes to the disciples, and he says, "As my Father sent me, so I send you. Receive the Holy Spirit." And then he breathes on them and says, "Whoever sins you forgive, they are forgiven. Whoever sins you retain, they are retained." Now, previously, God had sent Jesus to forgive sins. We see him doing that in the Gospels, like when they bring the paralytic to him, he declares the man's sins forgiven, and then to prove that he has the authority to forgive sins, he then tells the paralytic to get up and take his mat, and the man is miraculously healed. And in Matthew's version of the healing of the paralytic, Matthew says the crowd saw what Jesus did and glorified God, who had given such authority to men, plural, to men. So God, according to Matthew, had given the authority to forgive sins to men. And he'd done that specifically and initially in the person of Jesus Christ. But then after the resurrection, Jesus is planning on going back to heaven, and so he delegates this power to his ministers, and so he tells them, "I'm sending you the same way my Father sent me. The Father had sent him to forgive or retain sins, so now he's doing that to the disciples. He's telling them to go forgive and retain sins, and he says, receive the Holy Spirit." The word for spirit in Greek is pneuma, and that's the same as the word for breath. And so he then breathes on them to empower them with the Holy Spirit to go forgive or retain sins. So it's not just a, hey, everybody, your sins are forgiven thing. They have to make a judgment call. Do they forgive the sins of a particular person, or do they retain the sins of a particular person? And that means that they need to have a basis for discernment. They need to know about things. They need to know about the sin. They need to know that you're sorry for it, that you've repented of it. And that means, since most priests are not telepathic, that means we're going to have to tell them. We're going to have to confess that we sinned and that we have repented of the sin. And so they'll have a basis for saying, okay, then I can go ahead and forgive your sin. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a basis for doing that. And, priests, if they encounter someone who's just not sorry at all for what they've done, if they encounter a person like that in confession, they are not supposed to forgive the person because the person is not genuinely repentant of what they've done. So priests have to make this judgment call, and they need a rational basis for doing that. And to have that rational basis, we need to tell them about it. We need to confess. And the fact that Jesus commissioned his disciples to do this indicates that this is important to Jesus, and therefore it's something he wants his ministers to do, and therefore it's something he wants us to do, because we have a role in telling them about what we did and that we're sorry for it. So Jesus wanted this. Now, yes, we can and should confess directly to God, but at least some of the time, at least for some sins, which the Catholic Church calls mortal sins, we're supposed to use the means that Jesus enacted. Jesus set up this sacrament right here in John 20. We've got an obligation to use it. And so that simply falls straight out of the will of Jesus, and we need to respect that instead of rejecting the means and saying, oh, God will forgive me anyway, I'll just confess directly to him. No, he wants us to confess to his ministers. We can speculate about the reasons why he wants that. One of the really good speculations is because it helps to have that kind of accountability where you fess up to what you did to another human being. It makes it more dramatic to you as a penitent. It makes you take your sins more seriously. It makes you take your need for repentance more seriously. And it helps you by hearing an authorized minister of Christ pronounce you forgiven, instead of just, sitting there and trying to twist your mind into just the right shape until you feel like God has forgiven you. It helps to have someone who's authorized by Christ to tell you, I absolve you of your sins. That's a big help, and that's one of the reasons why Jesus did this. But we need to respect what Jesus' will was here, and he told us to do this, therefore we should do this.
Now, Niall, if I were you, I'd just play that audio for your friend. Do you know where to get the audio if you need to play it for him?
Absolutely.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, where I am.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Niall, thanks very much. That brings us to the first break. We'll do that. Then a whole bunch more calls. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin's our guest. Catholic Answers Live.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Many people are confused as to what news program to listen to. One news station promotes one thing, while another says the opposite. That's where Catholic radio comes in. This is Donetta Robin of Divine Mercy Radio in Hays, Kansas. assured that Catholic Radio will give you the news from a Catholic perspective and without bias. Be informed today. Tune in to Catholic Radio.
The world needs EWTN Catholic Radio, now more than ever.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Trying to tell Darren a story. And I'm such an old man. Wait, he's the guy that directed that movie. Remember? And then you got Kenneth Branagh. And then I'll be like, it takes me 5 minutes to think of what movie I was talking about. Man, I'm old. We better just get back to the phones. Eric in Corona, California, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. We're glad you're here, Eric. Thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hello. My question has to do with Fatima. I know it's been acknowledged by, multiple people in the church, like popes and bishops, but has the church or, the magisterium, have they actually declared that, yes, this was a genuine event and what the children said that they were told by the Blessed Mother is true?
Well, so the way this, it's never a matter of doctrine that a particular private revelation is genuine. But what happens is the church has a set of criteria that are used to evaluate private revelations, and ordinarily it's the local bishop that does the investigation and makes the announcement. And before they make the announcement, they check with the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith to make sure Rome is on board and doesn't have a problem with the bishop announcing either in favor of it or against it. And yes, the local bishop did approve the Fatima apparitions as worthy of belief. And that means that there is a solid basis for believing that the apparition was genuinely supernatural, and that it doesn't contain anything contrary to the faith. But that doesn't mean we're obliged to believe it. It is possible for someone, if they think they've got better evidence, they can say, no, I don't think that was. But the church has approved the Fatima apparitions as worthy of belief. And so it's not a matter of doctrine, but it is something that the church has looked into and said there's a credible basis for this here.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right. Okay, Eric. Thanks very, very much.
By the way, if you want to learn more about the Fatima apparitions, you might want to check out a few episodes of Mysterious World. Episode 40 is an overview of Fatima. Also, we have an extended look at the third secret of Fatima in episode 64 and 65. So you can go to mysterious.fm/40. mysterious.fm/64 and mysterious.fm/65 for all your Fatima needs.
That is a wealth of information. You're going to have fun with all that, Eric. Enjoy it. Call back sometime. I look forward to speaking with you again. Let's go to Ohio now. Michael in Ohio, listening on Annunciation Radio. We're glad you're here. Michael, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Well, thank you. I don't know if this counts as a weird question or not. We know that Christ preached to multitudes of individuals, like thousands. Mm-hmm. So how was he heard?
Well, he talked really loud, and also he would talk at a different elevation than the people he was speaking to. One of the problems, if you want to address a whole lot of people all at once, it helps if you're at a different elevation than they are. And it also helps if there's a reflective surface. Back in the day before microphones, if you went into a church, they had what was called a sounding board. And a sounding board was literally a board that was put behind your head, so you're the preacher, you're in the pulpit, and behind you is a board at an angle. And and you're also elevated, you're above the rest of the people. Because if you're on the same level as the people you're talking to, the sound waves will come out of your mouth and get absorbed by the first people that the sound waves encounter. It'll just smack into their bodies and it'll deaden it, and not so much of the sound will get to people who are further away from you. So it's a really good idea to be on a different elevation. And you can either be higher or lower than the people you're talking to. Higher is good if you don't have a reflective surface. So if you're standing above the people you're talking to, then your voice will project down to them and it will come to their ears and they'll be able to hear you, whereas the sound will not simply be absorbed by the people in the front row. And this is why in theaters we have stages. Because it not only makes the actors easier to see, but it also makes it easier for the audience to hear, because the front rows are not going to absorb all of the sound. It's going to travel unimpeded throughout the theater, and you can be heard even in the back. Now, in churches, as I said, they would have an elevated little place for the preacher to speak, and they would also put a sounding board behind his head that would catch his voice and reflect the sound down into the audience. Jesus didn't have sounding boards, but he did speak from elevated locations, like in the Sermon on the Mount. He's talking on a mountain. Presumably everybody else is below him, so his voice will get to the people in the back unimpeded by the bodies in the front. He also did something else. At one point, we know he got into a boat on the Sea of Galilee and talked to the people on the shore. And here's where the reflective surface principle comes in, because the water is a reflective surface. And so his voice would go down and hit the water and then be reflected up and scattered to the people on the shore. And so that was another way of amplifying his voice, with the water serving as a kind of sounding board for his voice. So that, using various techniques like this, Jesus was able to reach a large number of people when he spoke, and obviously he had a dramatic voice that he would speak with and project to the people in the back. As they often tell you, if you're doing stagecraft, speak from your diaphragm and really get that voice projected out so the people in the back can hear.
Okay, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I've often wondered, I suppose somebody's done the research, but you hear about the Lincoln Douglas debates, right? Mm-hmm. First of all, speakers in those days, they must have really worked on their speaking, or else it was hopeless. There's no way that when thousands of people would gather to hear those debates, and they had to talk for hours, unless you really could project, you were no good at it.
You did have to project, same as actors in theaters, and there were places where sound conditions were not ideal and not everybody could hear. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Life of Brian.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
But there's a scene where Jesus is preaching and he's giving the Sermon on the Mount, and he's giving the Beatitudes, and he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and you've got these people at the back of the crowd, played by the Python guys, going, "What did he say? Blessed are the cheesemakers? What?"
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they're offended by it. They're so by the fact that he's blessing the cheesemakers. But it's very interesting, because we haven't had amplification for that long, and people addressed large crowds in the past.
Yeah, well, there was another technique that was used in the ancient world that was a form of amplification, and that was using a megaphone.
Oh,
because you could shape you could use a kind of conical shape to amplify and project your voice. And in Greek theater, they would often have little megaphones built into the masks that the actors would wear, but we have no evidence of Jesus using a megaphone.
Yeah. That does change my image of him if he's using a megaphone too.
Especially if it's in a mask.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, it was a fascinating question. Thanks for asking. And it wasn't that weird. It was okay, but it wasn't that weird.
It was a scientific question rather than a purely theological one.
Here's the way Edgar does it. He writes, the next caller's name is Jean, but with a French pronunciation, and then he leaves.
Jean.
All right, okay.
Jean.
I know the French pronunciation of Jean. And then he just leaves the room. In New Brunswick, Canada, watching on Facebook, Jean, I hope I did that all right. Is that right, Jean?
Yeah, that's right.
Good thing Jimmy was here. All right. Go ahead, Jean, with your question.
Okay, my question is, at the end of the world, when Jesus comes back to judge the living and the dead, will those still living have to experience a physical death also before entering heaven or going to hell?
No, they won't. St. Paul, in his first letter to the Thessalonians, says, we will not all sleep. And sleep is a euphemism for death. So what he's saying is, we will not all die. But those of us who are alive and remain will be transformed in the twinkling of an eye and be caught up with the resurrected saints to meet Jesus and to be with him. So those of us who are still alive at the end of the world will not die, but they will be transformed.
Oh, good. That's nice. That's very nice to know.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to die. Some people say everybody's going to die. Well, not really. If you're still there at the end of the world, there'll be billions of people not dying. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Jean, do you have any other questions you can think of? I'm just enjoying listening to you talk to Jimmy. So if you got any other questions, no, call back, will you, Jean? I really like hearing you talk.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Now, okay, good. I look forward to it. Now, this is the next guy is John. So that's close, but it's not the same person. John in Washington, listening on 88.3 FM. We're glad you're here, John. That's an American John. Hi, John. You there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, Jimmy. First-time caller. I would like to know where it speaks in the Bible of man and woman living together, cohabitating, not being married. I know it speaks of fornication and men lying with men, but it doesn't specifically say anything about cohabitation.
Well, it doesn't have a passage that addresses the subject straight on, because the practice in ancient Israel was to get married really young. So by the time you were 20 years old, you were already married, and you didn't have to find a spouse for yourself. Your parents would find one for you. So they had arranged marriages, and it was rare to have someone who was an adult who wasn't married. There were some people, but the overwhelming majority of people got married in their teens. And so as a result, there wasn't really a call to have a passage explicitly discussing unmarried people cohabiting. What you would have a problem with, though, was people committing adultery, people who were married sleeping with someone else, and that does get condemned. You also have other forms of sexual sin, particularly in the New Testament, but also in the Old Testament, that are condemned. There is one passage I can think of off the top of my head that mentions cohabiting, and that's in John chapter 4. In John chapter 4, Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at a well, and he tells her that she has had 5 husbands, and the man she has right now is not her husband. And so that would suggest that she's been married multiple times, but at the moment she's just shacking up with a guy. She's not actually married to him. She's just cohabiting with a guy. And so this passage mentions it, and the implication is she's doing something wrong, but it's not explicit about that. What we are told is that we should not be sleeping with people before we're married to them. That's explicitly said in the Old Testament. The same sentiment is upheld in the New Testament. So we shouldn't be sleeping with people we're not married to, and by extension, we shouldn't be living with people we're not married to.
Thanks, John, very much. I'm going to leave that there because there's lots of folks on the line. So we're going to Dallas now. Zinaf in Dallas, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Zinaf, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, sorry. Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, Zinaf.
So my understanding is we as humans are probably never going to be able to see God as He is due to His majesty. So, but the fact that certain people in the first century saw God in His human form, does that not mean that people saw God face to face?
Well, so we know that God does not have, apart from the incarnation, God does not have a physical body. So when people are reported in, let's say, in Exodus, to see God face to face, that's best understood as a vision that they're experiencing. God is appearing to them and giving them a visual image of him, but they're not literally seeing a physical form of God. Also, in the next life, those of us who are saved will have what's called the beatific vision, which is a spiritual insight into God's nature. And it will be a more intense, direct awareness of God than anything we have in this life. It still won't involve seeing a physical form, but it will be a direct insight into God that can be called seeing him.
That's enough. Thanks. We're going to take a quick break. Right back with more Open Forum.
This is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Thank you for listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and he desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of his will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Are you a revert to the Catholic faith?
We'd love to hear about your journey tomorrow on Take 2 with Jerry and Debbie.
On most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin is our guest. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and lots of folks are on the line, but it doesn't happen very much when Jimmy's here. There are a few lines open, so if you've been wanting to talk to Jimmy about something, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. We're going to – oh, no, you know what? I'm just going to read this question because Marcia dropped, and I want to ask Marcia's question. She's in Colorado Springs. She was listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio, and she said this: I'm in a debate with friends. Is our solar system geocentric or heliocentric? What are your thoughts?
Well, in order to answer a question of what's the center of something, you have to say, what do you mean by center? You have to define some frame of reference. And in our solar system, there's no obvious point. I mean, the solar system has kind of a fuzzy outer boundary, and the sun is at or near the center of that zone of space that the solar system is, and so the Earth is not particularly near it. So you could, if you wanted, draw a line around the edge of the solar system and then find the geographical center of that, and that would be either in or near the sun. So it would approximate heliocentrism, on a geographical basis. But that's not actually the ordinary way of doing this, because typically the solar system is not treated just as a zone of space that has an edge around it. It doesn't really have a sharp edge. And so the normal way of treating the solar system is as a gravitationally bound set of bodies. And that means that you need to take into account the mass of every body that's within the solar system. And when you do that, you can calculate the point at which all of the masses of the sun and the different planets and the asteroids, there's a point where all of those masses balance. And that point is called the barycenter. Bary is from a root that means heavy. And so the barycenter is the gravitational center of the solar system. And sometimes the barycenter is inside of the sun, but not always, because there's enough mass in the planets and the asteroids and the comets to sometimes have the barycenter outside of the sun. It's always near the sun, but it's not always inside of it. And so the barycenter kind of wanders around the inner solar system, and sometimes it's in the sun and sometimes it's not. But gravitationally speaking, the solar system is barycentric. It's neither heliocentric nor geocentric. It's barycentric, where all of the gravitational mass, the gravitational center where all the mass balances out, that's the real gravitational center. Now, frequently when people are asking this question, they're not just concerned about our solar system. They're actually concerned about the universe. You know, does the entire universe, is the entire universe heliocentric or geocentric? Well, that was a question that was a bigger issue a number of centuries ago, because we didn't realize how big the universe is. It was not until the 1920s that we got the image, that it was proved that the universe is a vast sea of galaxies. Originally, it was thought that just our own solar system is all that exists. And if you think just our solar system is all that exists, there are no other star systems out there. They thought that the fixed stars were like on a shell that was around the Earth that was just beyond the orbit of Saturn. They didn't realize they were other suns that had other planets going around them. So they thought of the universe as kind of a series of, this is going back to Aristotelian physics, they thought the universe was a series of concentric shells, and it was most commonly thought that the universe was geocentric, because if you look up in the sky, it looks like everything's going around the Earth.
Yeah.
But it was pointed out that would also be explained if everything's going around another point, like the sun, and we're turning on our axis. It would, here on Earth, it would look like you get the exact same effect. And that was the Copernican revolution, when that idea really began to catch on. It had been proposed earlier, but that's when it started to catch on. But then we discovered in the 20th century that it's not, well, actually before the 20th century, we discovered that we're in a galaxy called the Milky Way. And then it was discovered in the 20th century that the Milky Way is not the only thing in the universe, that it's just one of innumerable galaxies that are out there, and we can't see the edge of the universe. And neither is everything in the universe gravitationally bound together. So since we can't see the edge of the universe, we have no way of establishing where the center of the universe is. It's like if you're standing in an enormous dark room and you've got a little flashlight, so you can see where you are, but the flashlight will not extend to the walls. They're too far away. If you can't see the edge of the room you're in, you have no way of establishing where the center of that room is. And so you have no way of establishing whether you're at the center of it or not. And that's the situation we're in cosmologically right now. We have no idea if we're at the center of the universe or not. You can pick any point you want and call it the center, but there's no way to show that any one point is the actual center. And in fact, the universe may not have a center. For example, if the universe is a four-dimensional sphere, then we would be on its surface like, you could put a dot on the surface of a balloon or a ball. But if you ask, where's the center of the surface of the balloon? Or where's the center of the surface of the ball? There's no answer to that, because the surface of a balloon, I'm not talking about inside it, the surface of a balloon or a ball has no center. And that could be the way the universe is too. The universe simply may not have a center. And so we can't show that there is a center, much less can we show where that center is. And so it's arbitrary when it comes to the universe. You can pick any location you want and run the math, and it will work for that being the center, but there's no way to show that one point, whether the Earth or the sun or anything else, there's no way to show that that's uniquely the center.
Marcia, thank you for that question. So it is possible that the Kardashians are the center of the universe. Luke in Seoul, South Korea, you are up next. Luke is watching on YouTube, and how exciting to get a call from South Korea. Hi, Luke.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, are you there with us?
Hello. Yeah, I'm here. Hello, Mr. Jimmy.
Go ahead. You have Jimmy? You're on the air with Jimmy. Go ahead with your question for him.
All right, thank you. Nice to speak to you, Mr. Jimmy. So,
thank you. Likewise. Annyeonghaseyo.
My question is this. I'm actually Nigerian, okay? I'm not from South Korea. I'm Nigerian.
Oh, you're Nigerian.
Oh, you're Nigerian.
In South
Okay.
Korea. Okay.
Yes, I'm living in South Korea, but I'm Nigerian. Yeah. Okay. So my question is this, Mr. Jimmy. I was listening to a Protestant pastor, non-denominational, so he was speaking on Peter's confession. Jesus building his church on Peter and all. So I need to understand something. Did Jesus build his church on Peter, or did he build his church on Peter's confession? So
I'm just going to repeat it real quick, Luke, for the listener who couldn't quite catch it all the way from Korea, that it's sometimes said by a Protestant minister, it was said to you, that Peter's profession of faith was the rock that Jesus built the church on. So was it Peter himself or the profession of faith, Jimmy Akin?
Well, so Scripture can operate on more than one level. And there have been people who've proposed that Jesus is building his church on Peter's profession, and I don't have a problem with that, but that's not the literal meaning of the text. The literal meaning of the text is Jesus is building his church on Peter. Now, if you want to propose, and there are ways to show that, which I'll get to in a moment, it doesn't bother me if you want to say, well, there are these additional ways, there are these additional layers of meaning in the spiritual sense of the text, but in the literal sense of the text, which is what the author Matthew intended, Peter is the rock. And you can show that in a variety of ways. I've written about this extensively. Just to give you one resource, Luke, that you can check out, if you go to my personal website, jimmyakin.com, I have a piece there in the library called Why Be Catholic? An Exercise for Evangelicals. And you could just Google that, Jimmy Akin, Why Be Catholic? An Exercise for Evangelicals, and it should come up for you. And I go through the arguments for why Peter is the rock in more detail there. But to cover it just briefly, Jesus, after Jesus says, who do people say that I am? And they propose the different answers. And he says, but who do you say that I am? And Peter says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus says 9 things to Peter. The first three things he says are, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. The second 3 things he says are, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And the third set of 3 things he says is, I give you the keys of the kingdom. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Now, there are structures in that set of 9 things that indicate Peter is the rock Jesus is talking about. In the first place, if you look at the very first thing Jesus says to Peter, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, that's a blessing. He is not running down Peter and saying, "Oh, Peter, you're this little small stone in comparison to this great rock of your confession." He's blessing Peter in that first statement. Also, if you look at the first statement in the third set, he says, "I give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven." That's also a blessing. And so if you have a blessing before "you are Peter" and a blessing after "you are Peter," that tells you "you are Peter" is a blessing. So Jesus is not running down Peter, he's blessing him. Then you look at each of these three sets of things Jesus says, and the second two explain the meaning of the first. So in that first set of three, Jesus says, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah," and the meaning of that.
No, we did it again. We did have that happen first hour. We had a little sound. Oh, sorry, Jimmy. You glitched for a second. So, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah." The meaning of that
is explained by, "For flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven." In the third statement, "I give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven," the meaning of that is explained by, "Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." And so in that middle set of three things, the meaning of "you are Peter" is explained by, "And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." So just based on these structures, it's very clear Peter, in the literal sense, is what Jesus is building his church on. It's not the confession that Jesus is the Messiah. It is Peter. And for more on that, from South Korea, you can check out "Why Be Catholic? An Exercise for Evangelicals" at jimmyakin.com, where I go through all that slower and in more detail. I've also written about it other places, like in my book, A Daily Defense.
Luke, I got to leave it there because I am a little late for the break, so I'm going to go to the break. But what a great pleasure to get a call from South Korea. And I hope that you will call again. I know it's almost 9 o'clock in the morning there, so you have a good morning and maybe call us another morning. We've got to take that break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I think EWTN News Nightly is beneficial in a number of ways. Not only do we provide the news of the day, but also thoughtful analysis on important issues. And it's all viewed from the lens of a Catholic perspective, something you will not find in mainstream media.
EWTN News Nightly with Tracy Sable. Tonight, 9 Eastern on EWTN Television and Radio.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live from South Korea to Indiana. We go in Brownsburg, Indiana. Jack is watching on YouTube. We're glad you're here, Jack. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi there. So my question is, what is a synod, and then what is the synod on synodality?
Okay, a synod is a gathering of different people to discuss some question or set of questions. There are some technical differences that can be drawn between a synod and a council, but basically they're the same thing. So there can be different kinds of synods. Dioceses can have synods, so you could have a given diocese somewhere in the world and it may hold a synod. You can also, and it would then gather people from within the diocese. You can also have national synods where where a conference of bishops will call together leaders from all of their territories, and they may have a national synod. And then you can have other kinds of synods. Following the Second Vatican Council, there was instituted what's known as the Synod of Bishops. And the Synod of Bishops is a meeting that takes place every year to every few years at the Vatican, and it draws a select number of bishops from all over the world to discuss some issue or set of issues. The so-called Synod on Synodality that we're coming up on is an example of the latter. It's going to involve gathering together the Synod of Bishops in Rome, and its theme is synodality itself. The basic idea of synodality, which has become kind of a buzzword in the last few years, is simply that the church should be run to a significant degree in a collaborative manner. It shouldn't have all of the decision-making just centralized. Instead, there should be more of an element of leaders from around the world and people from around the world having a voice in the making of decisions. Even if the ultimate decisions still get made by the Pope, he needs to be advised, and the different churches should work collaboratively together. And so this Synod of Bishops on synodality is meant to explore that question. How can the church in this collaborative manner? How should it function? How can it do better? Are there adjustments that should be made in how the church is being run? And how can we go forward together in figuring those things out?
Jack, thanks very much for the question. I hope it was helpful. I'm going to keep moving because we got still got some folks on the line and not a lot of time left in this hour. So off we go now to, I think up next is Charles in Virginia, listening to EWTN on Channel 130.
Actually, it's Mike in Dallas.
Oh, why did I got mine out of order. I'm sorry, Charles. Hang on. We're going to go to Mike in Dallas real quick, listening on MJ Radio. Mike, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, guys. Thank you for taking my call. My question is there ever a reason or a time in which the reciting of the creed during Mass can be skipped, or is that if it happens, is that a mistake, forgetfulness, or is there ever a reason for that?
Well, the creed is not required in daily masses. It is ordinarily required in Sunday masses, and there is an exception on Sunday masses, though, if baptisms are being performed, because if a baptism or a set of baptisms are being performed, the baptismal promises take the place of the creed. But ordinarily at a Sunday Mass or a holy day of obligation, the creed should be said.
Okay, so if there are no baptisms performed at this Mass, and this Mass is late on the Sunday, it's at 7 o'clock at night. It's the latest Mass of the day on Sunday. And it's happened a few times, so I was chucking it up to the celebrant. He's an older priest, and he forgets things sometimes. But I thought there might be a reason.
Maybe you'd ask him. Could you bring it up to him, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to try. He's not accessible too often, but yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know. I thought there might be a reason.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. As I said, I'm going to try to keep him off. I beg your pardon. I cut him off right when he's saying thank you. Let's go to Charles in Virginia, because I said to Charles I was coming to him just a second ago. Charles, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Charles, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi. In the Old Testament, there were two people. My old brain doesn't remember number two, Elijah and I think Moses, but I'm not sure, assumed into heaven. But if heaven was not open to anyone until Christ's resurrection, where did they go? Did they actually go to heaven?
Charles, what a good question. And I say what a good question in this spirit. We just lost our connection to Jimmy. So here's the deal. He's coming back. I can give you an answer. It'll be good. I tell you what, my answer will be good. But I know you want an answer from Jimmy Akin. What are you guys doing? We'll have him in a second. Charles. All right. So the two prophets, Elijah, and who's the other one? Went to heaven in the Old Testament. It's not Enoch, is it? Are you thinking of Enoch? Oh, all right.
No, I can't remember who.
All right.
I'm an old man.
Here's Jimmy.
The two prophets are Enoch and Elijah.
Oh yeah. All right.
Enoch. Okay.
And so people get all tangled in knots here because we know that Jesus opened the gates of heaven. So what happened to these guys? Well, what the Old Testament says is they went to heaven. It uses the Hebrew word for heaven, shemaim, and so that's just what it says. Now, how do we square that? Well, let me give you a comparison. I remember back when I was in high school, there was a rock concert that was going to be held at a local arena. And I was at school one day, and I was outside with a friend, and some roadie from the rock concert, I think it was Pat Benatar or someone, some roadie showed up and said, "Hey, do you want to cut class and come help us set up for this concert?" And as it happened, we didn't cut class, but we could have. So suppose we had cut class and gone and helped set up for the concert. Well, we would have gotten into the arena early, even though for most people, the gates of the arena had not yet been opened. We just got in early on this scenario because we were doing special work. Okay, that's what's going on here. Enoch and Elijah had a special relationship with God. They got in early. That's all there is to it.
I'm going to leave it there, Charles, because I really want to get to our last caller, Mary in Alton, Illinois. It's always good to get to everybody. 92.7 FM Mary's listening to. Mary, if you want an answer, you're going to have to be quick with your question. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Okay, real quick. I want Jimmy's opinion on the prophecy on the illumination of conscience are the warning
Okay.
that many of the saints have done.
Yeah, actually, it's not as many of the saints as you would think. I did a detailed study of the warning or illumination of conscience a couple of years ago, and I'll tell you where you can listen to the whole thing. It's Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, episode 122. And so if you go to mysterious.fm/122, you can get the whole show, and I go through the evidence and talk about the different claims that have been made and what evidential value they have, the status of different ones. And my conclusion was that God may give individual illuminations of conscience to people, and people have reported having that, so I don't doubt that. Also, it's hypothetically possible he could do so on a large scale one day. However, the evidential basis for that is actually not strong. If you look in approved private revelations, you do not find this as a regular, solid, recurring theme. You find it in a lot of unapproved apparitions, but in terms of apparitions that the church has looked at and approved, it's really not a strong theme in them. And so I can't rule out the possibility that there will be one day a widespread illumination of conscience, but the evidence for it is not strong. And in particular, I would warn people away from the more elaborate, sensationalistic accounts of it, like airplanes are going to freeze in the sky for 15 minutes while we have our illumination of conscience and stuff like that. There's just no basis for that.
Oh, yeah. And who wants to be on a plane an extra 15 minutes? Thanks, Mary, very much for that. The Pat Benatar story, Jimmy, you've lived a fascinating life. There's always some new twist or turn.
Thank you. I think that's true of everybody. Like Alfred Hitchcock says, a movie is just a person's life with the boring parts cut out.
That's probably true. Yeah, and generally speaking, in nicer suits than most people wear. Jimmy Akin, thanks very much. Looking forward to working with you all week this week. See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, and that'll wrap it up for us. Thanks for being with us. We'll get open forum tomorrow. We got Tim, we got Jimmy. Try to beat that. That's a pretty good day. We'll see you then, God willing. Catholic Answers Live.